This week, the X-Wings and TIE Fighters dogfight. And I use follow path for the first time. All right, so here we are getting into our first dogfight. This is the red leader. And the red leader, I do this dogfight in 3 different shots. The blue leader's dogfight is 1 shot. Why? I don't know. It's just the way it worked out. I didn't have any Grandmaster plan. I will show you something that went wrong with the blue leader, but let's start off with the red leader. As you can see here, the red leader flies around. And if you look down here, you can see I'm using follow path for the first time. Very exciting for me to use this. I had a hard time with it, but there are plenty of tutorials that can help you out. You'll notice as my X-Wing follows the path, the X-Wing itself still actually has its lights to light it up so you can see it. There are some keyframes on it in order to make it turn as it follows the path. So when you are following a path, you can actually still add keyframes to your objects that's following the path. And that's how I acquired the banking. Also, you'll see we finally have some cannon fire coming from our X-Wings, which is fun. I will discuss that in a minute. As you can see, once again, once it gets out of the frame, I just leave it there. And actually, I probably shouldn't, because you can see right here, there's still some glow from the cannons that I did not notice when I shot this. But it's so quick, I don't think anybody noticed. But now that I notice, in the future, I'll be moving stuff farther away from the camera once it gets out of camera range. So that is it for this. The camera has a few keyframes in order to basically dolly over as the X-Wing flies through. And I thought it was very dramatic to have the X-Wing shoot and then fly right past us into the camera, or right past the camera. So that is the first shot for the red leader. You'll notice here, I'm going to go back and actually show you the cannon fire. Look how many keyframes I have on this cannon fire. I have lots of keyframes. I had a hard time lining up the cannon fire from coming out of the X-Wings. It basically, I believe, probably shrinks down to nothing. Scale, yep, my scale is 0. And then I go to a scale of 0.002. My scale on this project is completely terrible. As I have discussed, future projects, I get better at it. But so I basically put the scale down to nothing. The next keyframe, the scale goes to full. And then I just simply move the cannon fire, the laser beams, if you will, 1 frame at a time so that they look like they're coming fast out of the X-Wing. It was just easier to do it this way than to do 2 keyframes. And that's how I did that. So let's move on to the next shot of the red leader's dogfight. All right, in this second shot for the red leader, you can see we have cannon fire that was already shot. So this is the point of view of the X-Wing shooting at the TIE fighters. Here's the camera. You'll notice the camera has a couple of keyframes like I always do to keep things in frame. Let's go back to here. You can see the cannon fire that's already been shot, missing. Then we have new cannon fire coming, missing. Some more cannon fire, I believe, coming and missing. They shoot and miss, goes right on past us. Honestly, I think those shots might have been a direct hit, but we'll live with it. And another shot missing from the other one. And then finally, we have a hit. Now, as we look at this, you are going to see this right here. This is what makes our explosion, as we discussed in the other shots when my little brother and the student pilot X-Wing flew into the Death Star and exploded. So that's what my explosion generated of. And you'll notice I again break up my X-Wing as I did, only this time you're able to see it a little bit more. This is not showing you the explosion for some reason, but there you have it. There's 2 shots here. There's an explosion. The TIE fighter breaks apart. The other TIE fighter flies by. And if you look closely, since my scale is terrible, this TIE fighter does not look good. It is just a little bit janky over here with some of the pieces because I scaled it down so bad and probably didn't apply my scale. So I've said it many times, apply your scale. I did not learn that lesson in this project, but I did for future projects. So back to this TIE fighter exploding. This TIE fighter explodes, and then you can see the X-Wing flies right through the explosion, which I will show you on the final render itself. And actually I rendered more because you can see down here, here's the explosion. I rendered more than I needed because you'll see on the next shot, I pick it up from the other side with the explosion and seeing the TIE fighter come through. So once again, because I didn't really storyboard this, I wound up rendering extra that I didn't need to do. In this project, it wasn't such a big deal. But if you have a complicated project where render times are massive, storyboard, make sure you have it down to the frame so you're not wasting time. Let's go on to the next shot. So in this shot, the explosion has happened. And you can see there that the X-Wing, there it is, that's my X-Wing control, that the X-Wing is going to fly through the explosion and then come out the other side and fly up and out of frame. You can also see, this is my, oh, there's the explosion. You can also see this TIE fighter in the background flying off past, and that one will come back to attack them in the trench later. So that's it. This is the other side. You'll notice my X-Wing here is not, my X-Wing is not moving. It is simply sitting there, and at this point it is behind the explosion. The explosion is full, and you cannot see the fact that my X-Wing is just sitting there doing nothing, not actually flying through space. That's how I hid my X-Wing, so that it looks like it just, boom, flies through quickly past all this and then up and out of frame. So there's some little tricks about hiding stuff. I hid my X-Wing behind the explosion and just started the keyframe, or started my follow path because I was doing follow path again. And had it fly out when I needed it to. No reason to move stuff around or have problems with stuff. You can get away with a lot in the virtual world of Blender. Let me show you the final render of this shot. So here's the final render. The X-Wing, I'm just going to step through it here. The red leader comes down, follows their path, comes around, and takes one shot here and then flies by, and oh, look at that, you can see the engine real close as it goes by in one frame. And then we're going to cut to the other frame. So those are that cannon fire that you just saw come down, a miss and a miss, and then a shot from that TIE fighter, and then another miss, a shot from that TIE fighter that flies by, and then finally a hit here on this TIE fighter. And you can see the explosion. Once again, I used EV for these explosions because I didn't want to spend 2 weeks trying to make these things explode like the X-Wing into the Death Star. So I just used EV, which was fine. Nobody noticed other than myself. And then you can see that X-Wing fly through. So there it is going through. So it's in the explosion right there. And here it is. If you remember, it was just sitting there behind this explosion. It sits there for a second and then comes out of the explosion. So I probably rendered more than I needed to on the front side of this shot and then just cut it down in the edit. And here it goes following its path up and out of frame. All right, let's move on to the blue leader. Now, in the blue leader shot, I did everything in one shot, mostly to vary it from the other shot and to challenge myself. And you'll see over here, I have a curve again that my blue leader is following. I had a problem that when my blue leader got to the top of the curve up here, it just sort of flipped around. And I still have no idea to this day why it did that. It troubled me. You'll see it. The funny thing was, what I thought was terrible, when my nieces saw it, they thought it was super cool that the blue X-Wing just sort of did a 180 quick flip at the top of this. So let's take a look. So my X-Wing is flying, it comes up and out, and then it just does this flip around, like so, and then comes back down. So what I didn't like as far as the flip around of the X-Wing, my nieces thought was super cool. So let's take a look. In real time, when it gets up here to the top, that sort of move right there, I felt looked kind of janky. I'm sure it has to do with my camera angle and the path it was following. I didn't like it, but they loved it. So a little note, something you might not like, other people might love. So don't kill yourself trying to make everything perfect, because this turned out to be a happy accident. So there's my X-Wing flying up and then down, and then it shoots. We follow the shot. I think it only shoots once. The blue leader is technically a better shot than the red leader. So it takes this one shot, we follow it down, it hits the TIE fighter. When the cannon fire from the X-Wing gets down here into the TIE fighters, as you can see, all four of these went right in there. I add another keyframe, and the scale goes down to nothing to make them disappear. And as they go into the TIE fighter and disappear in the one frame, the next frame, my TIE fighter starts to explode. There's also the explosion, which you do not see here, but I will show you momentarily in the final render. The other TIE fighter gets away and keeps going. And then my camera holds on the explosion, and my X-Wing flies through the explosion, and we start following the X-Wing away again. So that is this one shot in a nutshell. One shot instead of three, just to try something different. And there you have it. My first two dogfights, both using follow path for the first time. And if you'll note, I use follow path on the X-Wings, but not follow path on the TIE fighters. The TIE fighters are simply a couple of keyframes. So something to keep in mind as you work. Everything doesn't have to move the exact same way. You can use follow path for one and simple keyframes for the other. And then we're going to cut to the blue leader, and she just looks back as if a TIE fighter's just passed her, and then she's going to come down, and here we go. This is the funky shot where she flies up and twists around, and one single shot, we follow, and then that TIE fighter explodes, and she flies through. There we go. And I'm going to back that shot up and show it to you in real time so you can see how sort of weird and janky the flip around is at the top. In slow motion, it doesn't look so bad. To my mind, my nieces loved it, like I said, but in real time, it is super fast. That's not possible. Anyway, and that's it for the dogfight. Next week, we start our trench runs, and I'll show you some real-world lighting tips that I used in Blender. I'll see you then.